yes. Now, on the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
Do you know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Well, then who's playing first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
The fellow playing first base for St. Louis.
Who?
The guy on first base.
Who is on first?
Well, what are you asking me for?
Baseball feels as integral a part of the glossy image of Americana and as patriotically red, white, and blue as Uncle Sam or apple pie. It feels very unique in its own libertarian view of team sports and is probably the United States' biggest impart on sports internationally. So, I ask here to discuss it in terms of another late 19th century invention: film. Baseball is one of three major sports invented in the United States alongside American football and basketball. What baseball brings with it to a cultural standing is over 100 years of American history, the birth of a modern global superpower, and the culture that built itself upon. It's a sport that in many ways feels uniquely American, yet one of the few to go to great lengths to distinguish the individual in its own form of libertarian celebration. And so, it is often matched up with the film, the other, and in a sense equally vain American invention. Baseball feels truly suited to cinema, in a way few sports are. The visuals and field is played upon lends themselves to a sort of cinematic grandiosity, in the way that both basketball and American football don't. American football within cinema, due to its format, is not really easy to comprehend. There's a reason that most movies on the subject revolve around the coach, as they're the ones with the biggest role, and for those on the field, acting and general identification becomes difficult due to the masses of armor and helmets, and hell, I thought America was built on the idea of the individual. Then basketball, despite being a very close frontrunner, does fall flat in its presentation, most finale to a big league taking place on a rather visually drab court, and both cinema and America have to focus on the appearances. This point of drabness is of course not applying to Space Jam, but that only really loosely applies as a basketball or sport movie at all. Sorry, Bugs.
You called and blank staggered black skeleton and blinkety black bunker you trying to do.
Due to this channel's subject material, I'm willing to bet that you or the rest of this video audiences aren't the best versed in the history or rules of baseball. The term baseball can be dated back to around 1744, in John Newbery's children's book, self-awarely titled A Pretty Little Pocketbook. The book, containing a brief poem and illustration depicting the game, there referred to as baseball. The sport, as it's known, not taking off as a concept until independently developing from the English sport of rounders, around 1834, where the first American account rounders, in The Book of Sports by Robin Kevier, who credits The Boy's Own Book, a frequently reprinted book on English sports, played by boys at the time, as his source, however, calling the game base or goal ball. Then, in 1845, it is believed that an Alexander J. Cartwright, an amateur player in New York City, organized the New York Knickerbocker Baseball Club, which formulated a set of rules for baseball, many of which still remain. The adoption of these rules by the Knickerbockers and other amateur club teams in the New York City area led to an increase in popularity of the game. Yet, until the American Civil War, there existed two versions of the game, one in the Massachusetts game and one in the New York City game. But with the Civil War, soldiers from New York and New Jersey taught their game to others, and after the war, the New York game became predominant. With this, the sport became widely considered to be something played professionally, and thus the National Association for Professional Baseball Players was formed in 1871, the legacy and history of the sport cemented by then. The first film featuring baseball was 1898's The Ball Game, a mini-documentary, only 27 seconds long. This early exploration with the medium by some of its inventors, with Edison Manufacturing Company, featuring a game between the Reading Coal Heavers and the Newark Bears. The camera having been situated 20 feet from the bag, at which point a short extract of the game was filmed. The idea of the baseball movie wasn't really realized until the 1910s through 30s, where baseball birthed some of America's first sports stars, and Hollywood took no time getting to scratch that itch. One of the first films to come out of this being the Lou Gehrig biopic Pride of the Yankees, a movie released only a year after his death that co-starred many of Gehrig's factual fellow players as themselves. The movie starting the trend of baseball movies mythologizing itself into the public psyche. The subplot within the movie shows Gehrig visiting a boy who can't walk and promise he will hit 2 home runs for him in the World Series. The boy later visiting him, saying that Gehrig gave him the inspiration to walk, which, as you can probably imagine, didn't actually happen. It showed the tendency Hollywood would continue to do with a rose tinting of the idea of baseball. Because, as mentioned, baseball history is in many ways American history, and American history is messy and very often dark. The period that Lou Gehrig played in also didn't allow black players, and included the 1919 World Series scandal, in which mobsters paid off players to lose in order to fix gambling habits. However, this is still considered one of the great periods in American baseball history, and this time is revisited in most later movies. However, after the Second World War ended, the United States became much less isolationist and considered a world superpower. With this, the consensus throughout baseball as well as general Americanism was treated differently, and now was the status quo, unless a new, unique ideology, and so was ripe for criticism from younger generations. So, from this, a break from building mythologies of baseball, viewing now with a more critical lens, and including movies like Fish Strikes Out, where Anthony Perkins plays a baseballer pushed into the game by his father, and the book The Natural, that follows a mythic player who becomes corrupted by their ability and power. Then, only one baseball movie came out in the 60s. This one. Save It Home. I don't know much about it. It's, baseball movie. I don't know what to say. Anyway, the 70s, after the lack of films in the genre for the previous decade, tried to reinvent what baseball movies focused on. Movies like The Bingo, Long-Traveling All-Star, and Motor Kings moved the spotlight from more traditional, mostly white players to a lesser-known leagues and players. The Bingo, Long-Traveling All-Stars, and Motor Kings were the first to focus on an African-American league. Then the 80s brought in the modern consensus of baseball within cinema. The Reagan ideology, so prevalent and interjected, transformed America back into a more traditionalist pro-USA society. Figures in fiction like Rambo changed from wounded Vietnam vets to American superheroes. This was also where baseball, the mythology, moved back, and a legacy the last 80 years in the making kicked back in, with a build-up chasing for sweet, sweet nostalgia. This was when the generation of baby boomers, who had loved the sport as kids, but waned in their love, got back into it, and now adults, filmmakers of that creed, started to make movies about baseball. 2 of these being particularly interesting. This movie was based off the previously mentioned book The Natural. The 50s novel by Berman Malmud told the story of player Roy Hobbs and his corruption as a player throughout his career. However, the book greatly changes this casting, All-American Robert Redford as the lead, instead presenting it as a redemption story, and never truly dwelling on any flaws of Redford's character and part. That said, it is still a very good movie, and despite many of the era's fallacies, the movie it produced are good. Redford is brilliant as always, and the color tone emulating the blues, greens, and browns of an Edward Hopper painting. And the movie does capture a mythological brilliance, with the sport when Redford, as a boy, makes his bat it is presented almost like a revelation as King Arthur finding Excalibur. And in many ways, I think the movie thinks that the correlation would be apt. Redford much more the idea of the chosen one than anything else. And I mean, the shot where he hits the ball into the stadium lights and they shatter, I mean, just wow. Field of Dreams, on the other hand, I want to mention here, as you thought the natural romanticized things a little too much, let me present Field of Dreams, which, again, good movie, and is, oh my god, the most nostalgia-based thing I've ever seen. And I'm saying that having seen all the new Ghostbusters and Star Wars, yada yada. It grosses everything in this Americana, red, white, and blue glaze over it, and involves bringing back the Chicago White Sox. The team was involved in the 1919 World Series rigging, and has such a level of nostalgia at the time, it excuses all the players in that, and truly portrays Middle America as this glorious, simple symbol of heaven on earth.
Is this heaven?
It's Iowa.
Iowa? Could have sworn it was heaven.
So we come to the final question that I've been avoiding throughout this. Why does baseball work so well as a symbol of Americana in cinema? I mean, both The Natural and Field of Dreams were critical in financial successes, and I think it is because of that that baseball correlates its imagery for so many. Baseball is very much cinematically an extension of the Western. The relationship visually between the batter and the pitcher is not unlike two cowboys in a standoff. The crack of a baseball bat hitting the ball is for many as recognizable as the shot of a gun. And baseball's biggest influence on society, the cap itself, is an extension of the cowboy and worker's hat. I don't think it's a coincidence that many actors who've played baseballers have played cowboys. Ball also just works within its iconography. It singles out each player, linked to American ideals of libertarianism. A large, open field emulates the openness of the Midwest. Unlike other sports, it doesn't require you to be in peak physical condition to play, and due to its limited equipment, it's cheap and easy, lending itself to an everyman, working quality to itself. And it's about strength of the hit, running for your life, the one in a million shot. And that's why I would say that baseball is cinema's most American sport. Hi, this is Luke. If you liked that video, please like and subscribe, and click the bell icon for notifications about new videos.